Welcome to another edition of Around with Randall, your weekly podcast on making your nonprofit more effective for your community. And here is your host, the CEO and founder of Hallett Philanthropy, Randall Hallett.
Thank you so much for taking a few minutes of your day to join me, Randall, on this edition of Around with Randall. What happens when we look into our portfolio? We're thinking about our metrics. We're trying to figure out how to make our numbers work. And we see this series of proposals that aren't yay or nays. They are unknowns. It's unclear where the donor or prospect is at. We don't have a clear understanding of what we should do next. Today's conversation is about the tactics around moving people from an indecision to at least somewhere. The idea of re-engaging our solicitations after a delay. So let's start with why this happens. What are the root causes for really dormancy when it comes to philanthropy and the proposal process? The first is that there was in the kind of the process of the relationship developing a misalignment of timing. It's possible that when we asked may not be the right time to have asked. And we've talked about this in a number of different places about the timing of asks. But when this happens, there's lots of reasons for why it's mistimed. It may be because we didn't ask. We did not ask when they make these decisions. And I always use me as an example with my wife's philanthropy. We make our decisions at the end of the year. It's kind of when I know what money's available. But it also could be other things. Maybe it's something that has nothing to do with us. There are life events. There are divorces and illnesses and births, business changes. As I record this, there's a lot of indecision on tariffs and stock markets, and things happen financially that it changes somebody's willingness to financially plan, which would include their philanthropy. Or that maybe from a timing perspective, that they're just not in the mentality to make the decision right now. The second is what I would call a value gap. That when we think about the prospect, they didn't quite connect to the impact or the meaningfulness of that particular ask. They don't see the connection in their gift making that big of a difference, or really emotionally being ready for that kind of difference or understanding that difference. That it may not have aligned with their interest. We have talked many different times about passion. We should be spending more time talking about what people's passions are and then tying it back to what we do. The third is that maybe there are instances in your relationship with them as maybe a gift officer or the institutions, or maybe it's another institution's experience with them that hasn't been as positive. It's been underwhelming. And so there's a value gap hold. The third is something we did internal, that our follow-up wasn't consistent. In the different episodes where I talk about solicitations, I'm always talking about don't ever leave a solicitation without some kind of tentative deadline, a conversation around when can I follow up to see if this works for you. If we don't do that, then we're left with we don't know where we're at right now. And in the short term, that's okay. And we'll get into the tactical things of what you can say and do in those dormant situations under 3 months. But a lot of times we just keep staring at that portfolio report and the solicitation report, and we don't actually do anything about it. That's inconsistent follow-up. And isn't it our responsibility as a nonprofit, as gift officers, as fundraisers, that we at least are initializing all of the or most of the conversations to get to those higher level gifts? There's an old adage that I use with my clients. In fact, I did it just a couple minutes ago. I always tell them when I'm checking in kind of where we're at and with the different work that I do, I tell them that even if they're not ready for the next step or whatever we need to do next, that I'm always willing to wait on them. They should never have to wait on me. And in some ways, that's exactly what relationships like are in philanthropy for gift officers. Is we should always be properly. We'll talk about this language and some things you can say and do to do this. We're not just sitting back waiting for them to get a hold of us. We should be prompting, hey, I'm here, I'm ready, but it's on your time frame. This is going to help us get rid of what might be thought of as I talked about in episode 134, these zombie proposals. They're stagnant. They're stalled. What are we going to do? This internal missteps also include maybe it's poor documentation and we're not aware unless we ask. The contractual or gift agreement situation might be off. Or that, and I know this has never happened, staff turnover. That somewhere along the line, a handoff wasn't done correctly. If you're new in an organization, you might have a new gift officer. You might have a lot of these kind of dormant donor proposals, zombie proposals out there. You don't know what to do. Do you just sunset them and say, I'll start over? That's what we want to get into. Today, as we begin to move into the tactical, is we've got to figure a way out of this situation. And I think about it, stealing from one of my all-time favorite shows, and it turned out to be one of my wife's favorite shows, the idea of triaging, MASH, triaging the situation. And when you triage, you're looking at the scenario and you're creating what I think of as decision points or decision trees. Where are we at in this moment? Based on this circumstance, we kind of want to push ourselves into two or three, maybe four different options. And then there are steps within each one of those options. Today, it's really two. I believe that the first part of the triage is figuring out how long these proposals have been dormant. So the first thing you have to do is step one is define dormancy. And that's what I was just doing. I like to do it kind of 0 to 3 months or 3 months to 12 months. If you have a proposal that's dormant 12 months, unless there's extenuating circumstances, I have to believe that's probably not going to be a very good proposal anymore at a certain point. So we'll get to that at the very end. So our first part is the inventory. How many proposals, relationships, do I have out there that are dormant? And number two, can I tier them? 3 months or less, 12 months or less, or 3 to 12 months. The other part of this is figuring out, because not all proposals are equal, is the value of those proposals. And this is one place where, because we may have put a proposal in front of someone with a dollar figure, I hope that you did, I'm going to worry more about the ones that are $1 million or $500,000 or $100,000 rather than a bunch that are $10,000. It doesn't mean we're not going to deal with those 10,000, but I'm going to deal with the ones that have the most opportunity for the biggest impact. This also presupposes that you've done all the due diligence, that the ask amount is generically about right. You're not assuming that it just as a guess that they would do $1 million and you've asked for $1 million and they thought it was going to be 25,000. So the disconnect, the dormancy is based on just total internal misstep. I'm assuming that's not the case. So how long has the dormancy been in place and what's the value in each one of those two categories? The third is to set a goal. I talk a lot about goals here, obviously, on Around with Randall, around how do we make sure and help ourselves, whether it's color coding our calendar, so you doing that every day as a goal to make sure that you're efficient and effective, know where you're spending your time, to our metrics. Well, this could be what I would think of as a pseudo or mini metric. In the next 90 days, how many of these can I try to address? I didn't say solve, just address. So step one, inventory. Step two, tier. 30 days or 3 months or less, 3 months to 12 months. 3, and then prioritize in there based on dollar figure. And then number 3 is how many of these can I truly address in the next 90 days? 3 months. So if you do that, now you can begin to look at the decision tree. Because what you do next is completely dependent on whether or not they're 0 to 3 or 3 to 12. Because they're going to be different conversations that you may have. And now we really begin to move into the tactical, the language, the techniques, the conversations that you can have. So let's start with the time lapse being less than 3 months. Probably more than 2 days, but it's not 5 days. There's a month or two where I'm not quite sure where we're at. And so the first thing when you come out of that kind of decision tree, that action step that we have to figure out is what type of interaction did we have last? Because that's going to determine how we react in our initial conversation, or at least outreach. There's kind of two ways to think about this. There's an active interaction, meaning in some way, shape, or form, there was a hard, direct conversation. Maybe you gave the proposal to them and said, I'll check back with you. Or they said, I'll get back to you when I know. Maybe it was at an event or an activity and, it's a lot of people. You've already asked and you're, hey, how's it going? There's been some type of eye to eye, Zoom to Zoom. It'd have to be a really quality email. Active discussion. And the holdup is around something's off. What can you say? Well, first of all, I believe if you've asked somebody for a major gift, remember, and I probably should have said this at the outset. If we're talking about $50, just keep asking. But this is a major, you've asked for a significant amount of money. And significant, remember, transformational isn't a dollar figure. Significant isn't a dollar figure by definition. It's by when somebody's passion is lifted, when it's an impactful gift. For me, it could be $2,500 is an incredibly impactful gift because that's a lot of money. For a billionaire, it could be $1 million and it's not impactful at all. So realize it's about who they are and the gift level and their level of engagement, not about a dollar figure, but we're focusing on major gifts. Under 3 months was an active conversation. We're not quite sure. What can you do or say? Well, the first thing is you should probably call them. If you've asked for that kind of money, it's okay to call. You may not get them. Or if you do, what do you say? So either a voicemail or on a phone call. How about something like, I was just looking at a couple of notes and realized we hadn't talked. And I was thinking about your generous interest in this particular project, whatever you asked for. I'd love to reconnect and hear more about what you're thinking about it. Find out what might be possible. Remember what I said about what I say to my clients. I'm always willing to wait on you, but you should never have to wait on me. People don't just make decisions to give large sums of money away. Normally, Mackenzie Scott being the exception, as amazing as she is. Unless there's some kind of impetus by the organization, by volunteers of the organization, by a gift off of the organization, to say, we really want to talk about this. So it can be as simple as reframing it as, I'd love to reconnect. Come by and see what you think. You said you were going to take a look. I'd love to know more about what your perspective is on what we put in front of you. In some ways, when I say it's important to put a written proposal, could be just a page or two. If you're asking for $10 million, it might be 20 pages. Put something physical in front of them is because that document could be your, as I always talk about, next step. I'd like to review that document. I'd like to review your impressions of that document. I'd like to hear what you think about that document. Did it reflect what we talked about in that document? It opens the door for me on a less than 3 month dormancy zombie proposal with an active conversation last to re-engage them to find out what the holdup is. What's the challenge? let's go to the other side, under 3 months, and let's say it was passive. The last interaction was some kind of email, or it was you left a voicemail as a check-in. It wasn't very engaging in terms of moving to action. Well, then your language changes just a little bit because you've already brought it up once. Now, I'm not suggesting you call 2 days in a row and leave voicemails like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But if you called 3 weeks after you gave them the proposal, there wasn't a whole lot of movement. You didn't have any follow-up. They didn't call you back. Then that's kind of passive at the moment. So you're going to have to call again. Again, I believe in the call. People respond better when you call them. Leave a voicemail. I will get back to you. You can always call me back. Emails are easy to ignore, particularly when we're at this stage of a solicitation. And now we're talking about closing. So this dormancy leads you into questions when they're a little bit more disengaged around, are you still considering this? Does this still appeal to you? Is this something you think might still be a good idea? This passive moment, the reason we don't use the same language is because we're not quite sure where they're at. We've let too much time go. Remember, dormancy doesn't, or lack of communication doesn't mean no. It just may mean there's a challenge, and we got to figure out what that is. But we've got to get into the conversation. So less than 3 months, active. Hey, you and I talked about this recently. I'd love to find out where you're at. Tell me more about what you're thinking. How has this resonated with you? I want to review what your thoughts were on that proposal. Dormant, meaning 3 to 6 months still, but they're passive. Are you still interested? Is this something that we could talk about? So that's under 3 months. From 3 months to 12 months, we've probably let too much time go. And at this point, everything's passive because there's no connection. But I don't want to let all the work I did, if I did it well, to put a proposal in front of someone just go to waste without at least trying to re-engage them. At some point, there's kind of an uninspired prospect who is not making a gift. If they were truly inspired, they would have pulled the trigger, gotten back to me. I got to figure out what the disconnect is in that lack of inspiration. So once again, how do you reach out to them? I am a believer. You put a major gift in front of someone, you got to call them. Again, you can leave a voicemail, but it's up to you then to follow back up. Certainly leave your number. They can get back to you. Hey, I'd love to chat. What does that language look like? Well, first, I think it's okay to admit, without actually admitting, that there was an issue, there's been a delay, there's been a challenge. Bob, it's Randall Hallett. It's been a while. I'd love to try to reconnect. It's been too long. It's been 4 months since we've spoken. In some ways, when you do that, you take pressure off of someone accepting blame for why that's occurring. Now, I'm going to assign blame. It's your fault as the gift officer, the nonprofit, the representative of the organization. You need to be more engaged and not be waiting that long. With that said, I don't want them to think I'm blaming them. It's been a while. I'm sorry we haven't chatted. Now, the question becomes probably trying to do something different, because what you've done up to this point hasn't worked. So maybe it's an invitation to an exclusive activity or to join you for something. I'll give you a great example. It just happened. There is the U.S. Army jazz band coming to Omaha. And it's a free concert, but because of my father knowledge of the military and particularly the United States Army, these are the pros. These guys are going to be phenomenal. How cool would it be to call up a donor and say, hey, there is this unbelievable event. It's a once in a lifetime deal. And it, by the way, in this case, it's free. The military doesn't charge for what they show. Would you come with me? Or maybe your CEO's hosting a little bit of a private luncheon for a number of key constituents. Maybe it's a leadership Q&A where they can engage. What is it that you can do that's a little bit different and invite them into the conversation? The first step is to re-engage. And then after that, you can then get into, once they're there, hey, we were having this conversation. I'm sorry that it kind of I didn't follow up. What do you think? It's trying to figure out why there is no inspiration. Why aren't they inspired in all of this? It's finding a new paradigm or structure to have the conversation. Maybe you want to have someone else invite them into a conversation. Maybe it's a peer or a board member. You have to do something different. I've seen it be effective where, particularly in a large organization, maybe have and we're going to talk about this in a moment, a plan giving expert or dedicated person who says, we're doing some really interesting things based on some of the potential tax changes with our legacy society. No, you're not a member, but I know we had this conversation. Would you like to hear some more about this? I'd love to bring someone just to talk with you. You're going to have to change what you do, because if you've done any follow-up at all, there's been no connection, or you've not contacted them in that long, then they haven't contacted you and there's no connection. And we all know that's not good, but you're going to have to find a different way of re-engaging. In the end, in the 3 to 12 months window, uninspired, they're passive. You're passive. The communication's been passive. There is a moment where we have to just say, my term, bless and release. You can't keep people in the solicitation stage for too long, because eventually you might have put something in front of them, but it's no longer solicitation, it's dead. Part of what we're trying to do here in the 3 to 12 month window is figure out who can be, like the phoenix risen from the dead, or they're just dead. And it's okay. Probably we should have been a little more aggressive, but there are worse things like, hey, we don't know what to do. So figuring that out in this decision tree becomes really important. I would also add this for those that are maybe more plan giving or legacy potential dormant prospects, is giving them something to come to, or to give them information. Or I've done this a number of times over the last year and a half or two. I do a training for financial planners of, just here's philanthropy, here's what it can do, here are different options. Most who don't understand any of it, or have never heard most of it, don't know that much about it, but it would better serve their clients. We're not asking anybody for anything. Inviting a donor to step in and say, hey, this guy's doing this. Would you be interested in some thought, just information? How do you get, if you think someone might have been a long-term transformational donor, multiple gift opportunities, or maybe there's been gifts before, getting them to think about a legacy, and it then repositions you about, well, we did talk about this a while ago. Is that something you might like to talk more about? Lastly, what are the messaging kind of tactics of this? What resonates? So the first is you cannot pretend it's business as usual. There's a delay. It's stagnant. It's a zombie. You can call it whatever you want. There's no contact. It's not business as usual. You have a purpose. Express it. I'm trying to figure out where we're at and would like to make this work for you. Number 2, focus on curiosity and value and alignment. Curiosity that they have about what we were talking about, value of what that gift can do, alignment with what their passion is with what we're trying to do as an organization. And finally, you got to personalize this. That's why I said originally you got to have a 90-day kind of, I'm going to handle 5 of these. This is not every one of these is going to be the same. You're going to have to figure out what kind of, based on my last, in the decision trees, last contact, do I want to set up the next stages of opportunity of conversation. You have to figure out as well the idea of prioritization, particularly if you've got a lot of these. I mentioned earlier about how you might look at it 3 to 6 months, or I'm sorry, 0 to 3 months, 3 months to 12 months. And then by dollar figure, start with the closer ones, bigger dollar figures, and then move into the 3 to 12 months, bigger dollar figures, and see what you can do. At the end of the day, what maybe the most tactical is look and find 5 and identify a plan. 3, 4, 2, 1. Anything's better than just letting them sit. And then break them apart, 3 to 6 month, active, passive, 3 to 12 month. I'm sorry, 0 to 3, then 3 to 12. I keep doing that. I apologize. Set it up. Write it out. It doesn't have to be on a note card. It doesn't have to be a dissertation. It's just, what's my plan? Craft a message for each one of them. Take a note or two. Give yourself some notes. There's something off here. Don't wing this. You've done all the work. You've got a proposal. I assume you did the work to get to the proposal. Take a few moments and think about what strategy do I want to use based on what we've talked about today to get into that conversation. And finally, as a team, or if you've got a small group or whatever, have a conversation with the rest of the team about kind of an every 6 month, a biannual dormant prospect review. Who is too far out? There's urgency, like I talked about in episode about 32, 3, or 4, around making phone calls, getting someone else to also make phone calls so you don't feel alone. This is the same thing. How do I get others to help strategize, but more importantly, maybe create some internal pressure that we can all be looking at? How do we get over these things? I know it sounds crazy, and I'm sure none of you have ever had a dormant solicitation where you didn't know what to do. But I've run into this more and more, particularly as we've had a change in administration, change in kind of some economics. People are trying to figure out what to do. And that's not a bad reason for people to hold off on making the gift, but that's not an excuse for it being dormant. That just means dormancy really means you don't know where they're at. And we can't have many of those. If fewer people are giving and bigger dollars are making more of a difference, we need less dormancy. Even if that means people tell us, come back and see me in a month or two when things calm down, or we've had a sickness in the family. That's not dormant. That's somebody telling you, I'm ready to go, but I need a little time to figure out whatever the challenge is. I'm okay with that. It's when we don't know that becomes a problem. And today is all about reducing those I don't knows so we have more plans to close gifts for the things that are really important. Don't let this just go. Address it. It's hard because it's embarrassing and I screwed up and I should have done something different. Yeah. As I tell my son, life isn't about what happens to you. It's how you deal with it. It's here. Deal with it. You'll make it better for yourself and all the goals that you have by not letting so many dormancies stay the way they are. Don't forget to check out the blogs at Hallett Philanthropy, 2 per week, 90-second reads, hallettphilanthropy.com/blogs. You get an RSS feed right to you. Just ways in which you can think about different things that I write about twice a week, Tuesday, Thursday, leadership, philanthropy, things in life. Also, if you'd like to get a hold of me, it's podcast at hallettphilanthropy.com. It's an interesting time. And I think over the next 3 to 18 months, we're going to learn that more and more people need nonprofits, need you to be great. Don't forget, some people make things happen. Some people watch things happen. Then there are those who wondered what happened. The more people we work with, the more people that we are affiliated with, the more we are people who make things happen for the people and the things that are wondering what happened. The essence of philanthropy, love of mankind, love of humankind. The better you're going to feel about what you do, the more value you're going to feel in the impact, and the more we're going to be able to help those who need it. It's never been more important to do what you do every day. I hope you understand that, feel that, know that value, and realize you don't have to be perfect, but you can't have your head in the sand either. Address the problems, fix them, move on, build relationships, have conversations, listen to people's passion, connect it to what you do, and you'll move your nonprofit forward and help your community be a better place. I'll look forward to seeing you the next time, right back here on the next edition of Around with Randall. And don't forget, make it a great day.